December 2019, China notified the World Health Organization of several cases of human respiratory illness, a disease later named COVID-19. The virus causing this disease is known as Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. The disease spreads through small droplets that are expelled from the nose or mouth when a person with COVID-19 coughs or exhales. Therefore, standing close to someone who is infected can put you at risk. These droplets can land on your hand and be transmitted through something as simple as a handshake, if afterwards you touch your eyes, nose, or mouth, the so-called T-zone. The virus is known to survive on different types of surfaces, so touching these contaminated surfaces and then touching your T-zone brings a high risk of infection. What we know so far: the coronavirus is spherical in shape, and its genetic material is encapsulated by different types of proteins. Some of the key structural ones are spike S protein, the most prominent feature of coronaviruses from where they get their name, then M, or membrane protein, and the so-called envelope protein.
On November 5th, 2020, the United Kingdom went into lockdown. They were trying to control a spike in COVID-19 cases. And if you look at the chart of cases, it seemed to work. But despite having the same lockdown measures, infections in Kent, an area outside of London, were still rising. In early December, the overall drop in cases led the country to relax restrictions anyway. And then this happened. It wasn't until around this time that researchers realized that somewhere in Kent, the virus itself had changed. It was a new variant. It was more contagious, and it was spreading. By the time scientists gave it a name, it had spread to most of southeast England. 2 months later, it was in 30 other countries. 5 months later, it was the most common form of the virus found in the United States. Lately, more and more variants are emerging in various places around the world. So, why are they showing up now? And what does this mean for the pandemic? Viruses are very simple. They're basically just a shell of proteins surrounding some genetic material, either DNA or RNA. That genetic material is made up of molecules that can be represented as a series of letters, like this. Each part of this code contains instructions for how to make one specific protein that allows the virus to function. A virus has one goal: to make more of itself. But because it's so simple, it can't do that on its own. So it uses you. Every time a virus infects a person, it uses their cells to make copies of itself, replicating this complex code again and again and again. But eventually, it makes a mistake. Sometimes it deletes or adds a letter, sometimes it flips them around. That mistake is called a mutation, and it slightly changes the instructions for making the virus. That slightly altered virus is a variant. Since viruses are constantly going through this copying process, it's normal for them to change over time. For example, this chart shows some of the mutations the SARS-CoV-2 virus has made since December of 2019. Most of the time, these mutations are harmless, or even make the virus weaker, and they quietly disappear without making any notable difference. But other times, a series of mutations occur that give the virus a slight edge over us, which is what scientists started to notice with SARS-CoV-2 back in September of 2020.
You're seeing specific mutations that do allow the virus to bind human receptors better and enter cells better.
Coronaviruses are covered in spike proteins that they use to bind with and infect human cells. The thing is, that binding isn't a perfect fit, so it doesn't always get past the cell's defenses. But the B.1.1.7 variant, which scientists later renamed the alpha variant, has multiple mutations on the spike protein, mutations that make it easier for the virus to bind with cells, which can help make the virus more transmissible.